Men are the most misunderstood and demonized demographic on this planet. And it's high time that someone had the guts to say what I'm about to say today. Because I'm going to share with you 7 aspects about what it means to be a man that society needs to accept and understand in order to have any chance of making young boys and men feel understood and accepted. And in order to make policy and educational changes required to make the world better for both young men and women today. The first thing I want to talk about is that men find younger women attractive. Now, this isn't news. This shouldn't really be controversial to anyone, but it's important to understand that male attraction follows a bell curve distribution, roughly speaking. So that means while a 35-year-old man may find a 24-year-old or a 23-year-old woman the most attractive, he's still capable of being attracted to a 30 or 40-year-old woman, just like he's capable of being attracted to an 18-year-old woman. Men will forever find themselves torn between the two polar opposites of finding a woman who he finds the most physically attractive and who is biologically speaking the most fertile, and finding a woman who is the most intellectually stimulating and stable to be a mother of his children. The two poles that men are constantly battling one against the other. But really, why I'm talking about this bell curve distribution is because the very dangerous topic of understanding men and teenage girls. Every woman has had the experience that once she was physically mature enough, not necessarily mentally, but physically mature enough to start looking a little bit like an adult, men started paying attention to her. Older men, much older men. And some of those men tried to do something about it, right? So a lot of women, unfortunately, have had the experience of being 15, 16, have a 40-year-old man flirt with them. That's not a pleasant experience. Now, before I go on this video, I want to make something absolutely clear. I think that the age of consent laws are good. We need them. We need to protect younger women from acting sexually with older men. There are a lot of good reasons for it, including her maturity levels, power imbalances, her life experience, her ability to make informed decisions for herself. A lot of extremely good reasons. I don't want to change that. I don't want to condone any man acting inappropriately with a woman who's too young to make good decisions for herself. I absolutely do not condone this. So please don't misconstrue what I'm about to say with condoning action. What I want to talk about is feeling, thoughts. Because if we don't understand the thoughts, we can't help to regulate men in general. So every mammal starts to notice, the male member of the species will notice when the female member starts to become a mature, physically mature member of that species. He will notice sexually and start to think about taking actions. This is stable across most of the animal kingdom. When it comes to humans, we're not really any different. It makes sense that once women start to become physically mature, men will start to notice. Because we're civilized, because we live in a society, we want to protect those young women and give them a chance to mature fully before making complicated decisions. And I respect that. But there's a big difference, and I think we need to respect this, between a man noticing and a man acting. Because I'll tell you right now, almost every man watching this video right now has had the experience, this often happens at a beach, for example, where you see what looks like a very attractive, physically mature woman on the beach. And suddenly he finds out her age. Maybe she's 16. Now, what most men do at that point is they go, oh, and they feel a little bit embarrassed, and they stop looking in her direction, right? They stop ogling her, stop doing anything that could make her feel uncomfortable. They certainly don't flirt with her. They leave well enough alone. That's what most decent men do. And that is healthy. That is should be culturally accepted. But the difficulty is that women don't accept that men can find younger women attractive. It doesn't mean that it is our primary mode of attraction. So again, if you look at the bell curves that I showed you, this is why I brought up the bell curves. A man can find a 30-year-old man might find 22, 23-year-old women the most attractive. It doesn't mean that he can't find a 20-year-old attractive or a 19-year-old or a 16-year-old. It's less likely that he'll find a 16-year-old attractive than he finds a 20-year-old attractive. But it can happen. And we need to understand that that's normal, that that's healthy. Why? Because when we're communicating with men, when we're trying to educate men to respect women, to support women, If all we do is say, you men are disgusting, anyone who even looks at a 16-year-old girl, 15-year-old girl, 17-year-old girl, you're a monster, you're a pedophile. When you do that, you are not supporting men. You're not making men feel understood. You're not engaging in the education. Because if you say to men, you know what, it's perfectly normal to see women who are like 16, 17, if they look mature, to be attracted to them. That's normal, that's healthy. The difficulty is women can be harmed even if that's not your intention. If we have that dialogue with men, you will get far more men respecting the boundaries of young women. But if you just use shame and try to suppress what they're thinking and feeling when it's there and it's normal, you can't get the message across. Do you agree with me on this? Do you think that this is a topic that needs talking about? If you do, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, or at least write in the comments below. That helps me to continue making great videos like this one. The third thing I want to say is also going to be a little bit confrontational. Patriarchy, the fact that we live in a patriarchy is not because at some point in history, men decided they wanted to suppress women. The patriarchy was a joint effort between men and women for pure existential survival. In the thousands of years that we've been evolving as societies, the only way to survive was for the women to have lots and lots of babies and the men to be willing to fight to protect those women and babies. So we had to make women who were baby machines and men that were willing to kill. That created largely the gender stereotypes that we have today. The reason why it had to be that way is that any society that didn't do that, because there were scarce resources, any society that didn't make baby machine women and fighting men would get destroyed by the ones who did. And that's why every successful society we have that's grown large had that sort of man is the fighter, woman is the baby machine mentality. And I understand if you just look at the women and you say, well, women had to live in the home and just pump out babies and have sex with a man, and that was her job, that was her duty, that sounds like the oppression of women. But on the flip side, you can also say that men had to go out and die on the battlefield or be essentially or literally slaves in a farm or a mine until they died. That also sounds a lot like the oppression of men. The reality is, it was a team effort. We had to team up, and that's how we survived and create a society where our children could go on and live healthy, long lives, even if it wasn't ideal. Now, today we don't live in a society where that is necessary. It's not necessary for women to be baby machines. It's not necessary for men to go out and fight wars. And we're learning how to live in that society now. And we need to slowly evolve and change and accept that as men and as women. But if we keep acting as though men are the ones who have their foot on women's throats and it's all men's fault, we're not going to get there. We're just not. We have to see men and women as having always been a team that now needs to shift how the team operates. The fourth thing I want to talk about is that men on average develop emotional maturity and compassion much later than women. This isn't pseudoscience. This is literal science. We've known this to be a fact for decades now, but it hasn't found its way into policy, into the way that we educate men, the way that we deal with young men. And I can tell you as well, as a young man, I wasn't an asshole. I wasn't walking around hurting people left, right, and center. But at the same time, I didn't care that much about other people compared to my female counterparts. That's normal for being a man. And I think that a lot of the behaviors we often call toxic in young men is a result of that fact. Now, I'm not saying that it's okay that we should just let boys be boys and do whatever the hell they want because they're not emotionally mature enough. But we need to stop treating boys like they're defective, like they're broken because of that fact. That's just what it is to be male. That's just what our brains happen to be doing at that point in time. That's important because the way that we treat boys, the way that we correct those behaviors, the way that we urge boys to be more compassionate, cannot be coming from that place of shame, from that place of why can't you be more like girls? It can't come from that place. Again, it has to come from a place of compassion, of understanding it's different to be a boy. It's different to be a teenager than it is to be a girl. It's a different experience. Fundamentally, there's so many different things happening inside of our bodies that it has to be met with compassion. Compassion and then change and education. That's how we deal with this. The fifth thing I want to say is that we could honestly eliminate about 80% of sexual assault rapidly. How? If we change society so that it was a woman's job to approach men she was interested in, and all men knew that it was a woman's job to approach, that alone would eliminate a large majority of sexual assault. But that's never going to happen because women don't want it that way. Instead, it's a man's job. It's a man's job to approach. It's a man's job to read her body language. It's a man's job to know if she likes him or not. But here's the thing, no one's teaching him how to do those things. And it's worse, women aren't giving the feedback. They're not giving signals. If I go out with a group of guys, some of them might be attractive. No women are giving him any signals that it's okay for him to approach. So what men have to do is just approach everybody like a shotgun, like a scattergun approach, in the hopes that one of them are going to like him back because no one's giving signals. If men do approach, women aren't giving signals necessarily that they like him. Yes, you can learn to read women. I'm pretty good on knowing if a woman likes me or not, but it's not obvious. It's not clear. Women aren't like men. They're very subtle with the way that they make these things known. As a result, what do men have to do? They just have to keep moving forwards. Unless she literally says, no, I do not like you, he has to keep moving forwards because it's not clear either way what's going on. And so when we have young men who are sexually frustrated, who aren't getting an education in what to do, no one's teaching them, no one's helping them, women are not giving the signals. Not only that, women are vague on consent. What do we think is going to happen? Now, I know that we can try to educate young boys to respect women and always seek consent. And it's not the worst solution, right? Because we need to protect women somehow. But honestly, if we could just teach men and women how to meet and talk to and interact with members of the opposite sex. How are we teaching geography at school? How are we legitimizing the fact that we can teach geography, but when it comes to the most important interpersonal relationships that we are ever going to have, no one's teaching us diddly at school? I think that's disgusting. I think that needs to change. If we are serious about reducing sexual assault, if we're serious about making dating more comfortable and safe for women, we need to educate both men and women to act in specific ways during dating that make it easier for both genders. Because if you just have, frustration, lack of education, I don't know what the heck people are expecting is going to happen. The sixth thing that we really need to understand is that men's sexuality is far more likely to live at the extremes than women's. So you're going to have far more men with foot fetishes than women with foot fetishes. You're going to have far more men into BDSM than women into BDSM, although BDSM is a little bit more complicated. So maybe I shouldn't mention that specifically. But fetishes, more men are going to have them. And more men are going to have more extreme fetishes. And this is fine when the fetish you have is consensual and involves two adults that can consent. But not all sexual preferences are like that. The complicated thing with sexual preferences is that we do not choose them. And I think this particularly applies to things like pedophilia, which is such a complicated topic to talk about. And I've got to be careful with what I say here. The act of harming a child is unforgivable. I think society is right in saying that is just, we have to protect children. But the way that we view pedophilia needs to shift slightly, not the act, the feeling. Because if you think of someone who was born a pedophile, they cannot change what they like. They cannot change what they're attracted to. So we are requiring pedophiles to essentially be celibate functionally for their entire lives. And we're expecting them to do that with absolutely zero support. I'm willing to bet my kidney, the world is got a lot of men who are attracted to young female children who aren't acting on it. They don't want to act on it. They feel bad. They feel disgusting. They feel awful that they have these urges. They're not doing anything. But these men are doing it all without support. They're like a ticking time bomb. And how safe can these children actually be with men like this going around without any support? We know how hard it is to be celibate. We've known for centuries, for thousands of years, how difficult that request is of any human male. But we require that of pedophiles. We require that of people who feel attracted to young children. And we need to accept that they didn't choose to be that way. And yes, those who acted and hurt children absolutely chose. There should be a massive punishment. I'm not arguing that. I'm not legitimizing the act. But if we want to make society safer for children, we need to change the way we feel about people who have those feelings. Not the actions, but the feelings, the urges. People who are born that way who can't change it. If we supported them better, I think we could greatly reduce the number of children that are at risk. The last thing I want to talk about is that men don't have a language for their combined experience. Women have had feminist literature, they've had feminist education, social support structures, they have communities. Not only that, women have been taught for thousands of years it's okay to share what you're feeling, what you're thinking, to talk about, to ruminate with those close to you about what you're feeling and experiencing. So women are much better than men on average at expressing what they're feeling, what they're going through in life. Right now, we have men struggling. Certain demographics of men are struggling a lot. And they are doing their best to describe what they're experiencing. But the problem is they don't have the language, they don't have the support structures, they don't have anything that's going to help them get that message out. And so, very often young men in their 20s, are trying to say, hey, we're struggling, listen to us. And they're not always doing it in the nicest way. They're not always doing it in a way that's easy to absorb, to ingest, right? Because they don't know how to communicate feelings well. They don't know how to communicate experiences well. They don't know how to make themselves be understood. Because for thousands of years, men have been taught, shut up, keep your feelings to yourself. Men are meant to be stoic. Men aren't meant to share. And so we're not given a language. We're not given that skill by society as we grow up. But we need to listen to men. We need to stop and understand and have a little compassion, especially young men, and say, hey, they're trying to speak. Let's help them be understood. On the whole, society does not want to do that. And we need to do that. Because men and women, we're not enemies. We're meant to be a team. We're meant to work together. The only way society functions is if men and women are on the same page, or we will continually antagonize each other. And I see that plenty of that on TikTok. I see plenty of it on YouTube, this antagonism between men and women, and it's hurting both genders. But the reality is we hear women on the whole. I know some men don't. Obviously, some people are closed off. Various different reasons. I'm not going there. But on the whole, as a society, we hear women. We don't hear men. We don't want to hear men. And if we want to make the world better for men, if we want to make the world better for women, we need to hear. We need to listen. We need to stop judging and just listen for a moment. So I hope this video has been interesting. I'm pretty sure I'm going to get a lot of people in the comments. I'm pretty sure that there's going to be people who disagree with me, and that's okay. Let's talk about this stuff because it needs to be talked about. Some of this, I hope that YouTube doesn't get me into trouble. This kind of stuff that is risky, but it needs to be said. So if you've really liked this video, please help me by giving me a thumbs up, subscribe, share the video with someone, write something in the comments below. Do any or all of those things. It helps me so much make more videos just like this one. I hope you guys take care of yourselves. I look forward to seeing you in my future videos.